I remember the morning sunlight filtering through the kitchen window, illuminating the small motes of dust floating in the air. It was so bright that day, so at odds with the crushing realization that had settled in my chest. My morning coffee tasted bitter, and it had nothing to do with how I brewed it. Across from me sat my wife, Brenda, looking through the local newspaper. She kept stirring her tea absently, as though she could barely focus on anything. And to my right, her daughter, my stepdaughter, Karen, quietly tapped away on her phone like she was physically tethered to it. We had been married for 5 years. 5 years of mild ups, mild downs, and a slow, predictable routine. Nothing in those early moments had screamed impending disaster, but cracks were there, hairline fissures that deepened day by day until they were impossible to ignore. Brenda and I used to share warmth, quiet mornings talking about future plans or even silly banter about something on TV. Now we were reduced to a few grunts, half-formed comments about bills or schedules, and a tension so palpable it practically took up space at the table. On that day, as I took a tentative sip of coffee, a subtle shift in the room told me something big was about to happen. Brenda folded her newspaper and laid it down, almost too neatly. She held on to its edges, biting her lip as though summoning some hidden reservoir of courage. I felt my stomach knot. These last few weeks had been odd. I tried telling myself it could be stress. Maybe she was just tired, overworked, or maybe it was something I'd done. I would have welcomed any scenario but the one I feared most. Yet the fear clung to my mind, insisted that yes, the worst had arrived. It was the phone that first signaled disaster. She was never without it, even in bed. The device was always locked, notifications hidden. She would flip the screen down whenever I entered a room, as if I were some intruder in her private world. Months of that had turned me into a suspicious wreck. I had tried to push my paranoia aside, but it would not be quiet. And so, on a week evening when I could stand it no longer, I hired a private investigator. It cost me a chunk of change, $2,000 I could have used on something else, maybe stashing more into Karen's college fund. But desperation triumphed. I needed the truth. And the truth, as I soon learned, was that Brenda was in contact with her ex-husband, Marcus. The same man she divorced after he nearly destroyed her life with abuse, drunken rages, police sirens, and restraining orders. That was the man she was choosing over me, lying to me about, and, as I would find out, sleeping with. So I waited, and sure enough, that morning was the moment she decided to drop her little bombshell. She folded the paper shut, pressed her lips together, and finally spoke. "Brian," she said softly, "I need to tell you something." Her voice trembled, trying to sound gentle, yet a tension in her jaw gave away her trepidation. My heart hammered in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm, to remain the collected man I always pretended to be. I set my coffee mug down, hearing the dull clink as porcelain met the table. I waited a beat, my eyes fixed on hers, and replied, "Oh yes, dear, go on, I'm listening." My voice was measured, a neutral evenness that belied the storm in my gut. Karen glanced up from her phone, flicked her gaze between Brenda and me, and smirked before looking down again. She always had that air of cynicism, a reflexive sneer that rarely left her face. But I paid it no mind, still focusing on Brenda. She took another breath. "I'll be out of the house for a month," she said finally. Her words fell into the hush of the room like a jagged rock plunked into a serene pond. I stayed silent, trying not to show alarm. A month. That was no quick getaway to a friend's place. Something big was being confessed, so I just nodded, letting her continue. "I mean," she hesitated, "I'm going to stay with Marcus, my ex. It's his birthday month." Her voice was nearly trembling, but she looked at me steadily. "I want to make it good for him. And I figure if I tell you, it's not really cheating." The logic was so ridiculous, I nearly laughed. "Not really cheating because I'm telling you?" A wave of disbelief crashed over me, but I remained outwardly calm. She was looking for a reaction, either permission or an explosion that she could use against me. I refused to give her that. "Okay," I replied flatly. She seemed momentarily confused by my non-reaction. I could sense her bracing for an argument, but I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I asked the straightforward question gnawing at me. "So what exactly are you planning over there, Brenda? You going to be his cook, his cleaning lady, and his lover all rolled into one? Is that the plan?" A twinge of dark sarcasm slipped into my tone. "Did he run out of money to hire someone else for his needs?" Her face flamed with anger. "What the hell, Brian? Don't call me a maid or a hooker. You're being disgusting." I'm going to be with him as a wife might be with a husband." She jutted her chin, refusing to be cowed. This was the moment my mouth went dry. "But you already have a husband," I said quietly. "Remember the vows we took?" She shrugged, a gesture meant to appear casual but came off as defensive. "It's not cheating if I told you," she insisted. "I'm being honest, so it doesn't count as betrayal. You can't accuse me of sneaking around when I'm telling you to your face." I took a slow breath and forced my expression to remain neutral. I could sense Karen's stare on the side of my head, so I shot her a glance. She was smirking in a satisfied kind of way, as if reveling in the tension. Of course, I thought, she's always disliked me, always favored her father, Marcus. But then the real stinger dropped. Her next words made it clear she was not just a spectator. She was a co-conspirator. "Mom has her needs and desires," Karen said, her tone dripping with teenage contempt. "She doesn't have to sit around waiting for you to be, I don't know, interesting or whatever." She rolled her eyes. "She's free to do what she wants. You don't own her." A spike of fury shot through me, but I tamped it down. "Karen," I said sternly, "that's between Brenda and me. This is our marriage." She gave a shrug. "But I'm involved too, whether you like it or not. If I want to see my dad, or if she wants to see her ex-husband, that's none of your business. And it sure as hell isn't cheating if she announces it." I scanned Karen's expression and saw so much smug defiance there. That's it, I realized. She's not just supporting her mom, she's actually encouraging this entire fiasco. Possibly she was the mastermind behind Brenda reconnecting with Marcus. The private investigator's photographs had suggested Karen had been present on some of those visits. This runs deeper than I thought. Still, I feigned calm. "Well," I said, raising my hands, "I see I'm outnumbered here. If you two have already agreed on this plan, I'm not about to stand in your way. But Brenda, if you're going to go off for a month to play house with your ex-husband, I have terms of my own." Brenda folded her arms, her face still etched in annoyance. "Terms? Don't tell me you're about to lecture me on morality, Brian. You're not my dad." I shook my head. "No lecture. I'm simply stating that during these 30 days, we'll be legally separated. You sign the paperwork, you forfeit any financial support from me for you or Karen, and in return, I'll be free to do whatever the hell I want. No obligations." "Are you serious?" she asked, frowning. I nodded. "Dead serious. You want your freedom? Fine. You can have it. But I'm not going to bankroll the affair, and I'm not going to be labeled a fool if you decide to come back. I want it all on paper. So if you vanish for a month, I'm free as well." I turned to Karen. "That also means I'm not paying for anything regarding you, Karen. College, car, phone bills, nothing. Not during the separation." Karen snorted dismissively, but I caught a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "I can handle my own stuff. My dad will help out," she said, though her tone was less confident than usual. Brenda cut in. "Fine. Draft the damn papers. I'll sign them." That quickly, with an ease that sliced me like a blade, Brenda agreed to disclaim her marriage for a month. My throat tightened, but I forced a cool smile. "All right," I said. "I'll call the lawyer." That was the beginning of something so dark and twisted, so soul-crushing that even now, I still find it hard to believe how seamlessly it all unfolded. But oh, how meticulously I had planned my response once the PI uncovered the truth. For weeks, I'd been preparing. I had pictures, text messages, even video evidence. My approach was going to be swift, legal, and financially devastating. If Brenda wanted to risk our marriage on an ex-husband who had beaten her nearly senseless before, then I intended to show her exactly how catastrophic that decision could be. The next day, the documents were drawn up. Brenda, arrogant as ever, signed them without reading a single word. I caught Karen peering over, a small grin on her face as she watched her mother scribble her signature. Karen didn't sign anything. There was no need. She was still a minor in the sense that she wasn't out of high school yet, although she was 18. But the separation agreement covered my refusal of financial support for the both of them. My lawyer, Mr. Gomez, said it was unusual but workable. Brenda's attitude was a mixture of smug triumph and false bravado, completely convinced she was in the right. She had Karen whispering in her ear, "Just sign it, Mom. Brian can't do anything about it in the long run. This is just for show. He'll still be there once we get back." I overheard that whisper from the corner of the room, and my jaw clenched. Karen's feeding Brenda illusions, I thought grimly. She's the one egging her mother on. It was suddenly so obvious. Their texts, their shared scorn, the times Karen had snuck away in the evening and refused to tell me where she was going. Clearly, she'd been pushing Brenda toward reconnecting with Marcus. And Brenda, saddled with her old trauma, but also an odd longing for the thrill of that dysfunctional past, had fallen right in line. "Brian, let's just do this," Brenda snapped at me when I told her we'd finalize everything by the next morning in court. "I've got a month away to look forward to, and you can do whatever it is you want." "Sounds good," I said with feigned calm. Inside, I felt a swirl of confusion and anger. Part of me wanted to scream at her, "Why?" But the other part resigned itself to the unstoppable momentum of her betrayal. Brenda packed her bags with unbridled excitement. She was humming under her breath as she folded clothes and placed them in a large suitcase. Karen was helping, rummaging through drawers and offering cheerful suggestions like, "Mom, you should wear that black dress Dad got you for your birthday. It'll drive Marcus crazy." I stood in the doorway of the bedroom, arms folded. The scene looked so bizarre, like they were preparing for some vacation. In a sense, they were. A vacation to her ex-husband's place, where apparently every twisted desire would be indulged. The final sting was hearing Karen say, "Don't worry, Mom. Dad's not going to do anything. He's just mad now. Once we get back, everything will be fine. And if he tries any crap, we'll just say it was his idea, that he forced you to sign that separation agreement." That was how I learned, definitively, that Karen was the puppet master. She was the one who stoked Brenda's fantasies of going back to Marcus. She was the impetus behind Brenda's brazen approach. It was Karen who insisted that telling me in advance equaled no cheating, and that they could manipulate me after the fact. The extent of her duplicity left me speechless, but it also crystallized my resolve. I would not allow them to use me anymore. They had no appreciation for my generosity, no appreciation for my role as a husband or stepfather. It was time for me to cut them loose. Brenda caught me standing there. "Don't you have anything better to do?" she said, an eyebrow raised. "We're finishing up, and then Karen and I will head over to Marcus's. I'd appreciate it if you made yourself scarce during our departure. I don't want any drama." "Don't worry," I said. "I plan on waving goodbye. That's the extent of the drama you'll get from me." She gave a dismissive sniff. "Sure." They left that evening, suitcases in hand. Brenda blew through the living room like she was checking out of a hotel. Karen trudged along behind her, an eager grin plastered on her face. She didn't even look at me, as though I had already ceased to exist in her universe. Once they were both out the door, I followed them onto the porch, leaned against the railing, and raised my hand in a wave. "Bye," I called out. "Drive safely. Marcus's place is across town, right? Enjoy your month." Karen turned around and shouted, "Hope you realize you just made the biggest mistake of your life." And just like that, they were gone. The car pulled away. The house fell silent. My chest felt hollow, but my mind was clear. I stepped inside, locked the door, and poured myself a generous glass of whiskey. I took a slow, contemplative sip, letting the burn fill my throat. Now, I thought, it's my turn. Over the next few days, I put into motion the carefully crafted plan I had nurtured after discovering Brenda's lies. First, I arranged to sell Karen's car. It was in my name, purchased with my money. She'd always complained about the color. "It's not my favorite shade," she'd whine. Well, problem solved. It wouldn't be her shade anymore because it wouldn't be her car. Then I sold Brenda's car as well, the one she treasured, the one she'd post on Instagram with pride, as if she had paid for it. In reality, I had. Now that she was officially separated from me, she had no rightful claim. I also drained our joint accounts, which was the real kicker. We had a solid sum in there. Money set aside for bills, vacations, emergencies, and a sizable chunk for Karen's college fund. I was the main contributor. Brenda, never a big earner, had only chipped in from time to time. In an instant, I transferred it all to an offshore account I'd opened discreetly. If Karen wanted to go to college, she could ask her father or mother to pay for it. While part of me felt guilty over the college fund, the memory of Karen's smug grin erased my hesitation. She'd orchestrated this entire fiasco, pushing her mother into bed with a violent abuser. She'd sneered at me, told me I was irrelevant, taken me for a fool. So, no, I wouldn't fund her education, not after all that. She had dug her own financial grave, and I wasn't about to bail her out. I also arranged for a quick sale of the house, my house in my name only. Though in truth, I wanted to keep the property for my own long-term plans. But for the short term, I ensured that by the time Brenda's 30 days were up, the locks would be changed and she'd have no legal right to re-enter as my spouse. For good measure, I canceled all their phone lines that were in my name. It was petty, maybe, but after everything, petty felt justified. 3 or 4 days passed in peace. I drank coffee in the morning with no anxiety gnawing at me, no tightness in my chest. I watched an old movie, read a book, and even got a decent night's sleep without the tension of Brenda's phone lighting up at 2 a.m. with some suspicious text. Then, on the 5th day, the calls started. Brenda tried my cell phone first, maybe 2 or 3 times in an hour. I didn't pick up. Karen started calling next, leaving short, angry voicemails that grew increasingly confrontational. "Brian, pick up, you asshole," she spat in one message. "We know you did something with the money. Mom's card got declined. Call me back." I just sipped my whiskey and let it go to voicemail. I was done dealing with them on their terms. Eventually, Brenda tried the house phone, which I'd forgotten to unplug. I found myself staring at the old cordless handset as it vibrated across the coffee table, shrill rings echoing in the silent living room. "Finally," I answered, if only to get it over with. "Where the hell are you?" Brenda's voice demanded the second I picked up. "I've been calling your cell. Karen's been calling you too." I swirled the remains of my whiskey and replied calmly, "I'm taking care of my desires. Busy, you know." A brief silence, then she snapped, "That's not funny. Why did you empty our accounts? I got notifications that everything's been cleared out." "Everything, Brian." I allowed a small laugh, though my heart pounded. "What are you talking about, Brenda? You agreed for a 30-day separation. That means I can spend my money how I want. And I wanted a Jamaican vacation, so that required funds." She let out a strangled sound. You can't do that. Karen's college fund was in there. She needs that money. And we need. Her voice faltered as the realization sank in. They were broke or close to it. On top of that, I'd sold Karen's car and Brenda's car. No doubt they discovered that too. "What did you do to our vehicles?" Brenda asked shakily. "I sold them," I said matter of fact. "Or, more specifically, I sold my vehicles. You and Karen didn't pay a dime on them. You're staying at Marcus's now anyway. Let him buy you new ones. Let him handle the costs." "Brian, you son of a—" I cut her off. "If you want to keep insulting me, that's fine. But it's not going to change anything. We're separated. You do your thing and I'll do mine." Then I hung up. For the next several days, I repeated this cycle. They'd call. I'd sometimes ignore, sometimes pick up. The calls were laced with venom, insults, half-baked threats to call the police or sue me, but Brenda had signed the separation agreement. She had effectively given me a free pass to do what I wanted financially. She had also effectively let me set the stage for a divorce that would come down squarely on her shoulders, considering her documented affair and the preceding timeline. One evening, about a week into this fiasco, I got a voice message from Karen. She sounded furious, borderline unhinged. "You piece of shit!" she screamed into my voicemail. "You can't cut me off like that! You think you can just not pay for my college? I'll sue you for domestic abuse or something, I don't know. My dad said we can probably get a lawyer to spin this as your fault, and you also sold the damn car I was using. I can't even get to school now. What am I supposed to do? Take the bus like some loser? You are so going to regret this, Brian." That was her message. That gave me more clarity than ever. Karen had always wanted me to keep paying, keep providing the lifestyle she was accustomed to, while she helped orchestrate her mother's affair. She was in it for her own gain, perhaps hoping to get her father back with her mother, while I continued funding them. The gall. I saved that voicemail as evidence. If she tried to accuse me of something, I'd have a record of her extortion threats. At that point, any residual fatherly sympathy I had evaporated. She was not my daughter biologically. I had never adopted her, and she had always treated me with resentment. Now, she was crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed. During those 30 days, I also worked with my lawyer to expedite a formal eviction. Brenda might try to return after the month was up and claim squatters' rights or spousal rights, but not if I filed the correct paperwork. I served them with notices, pinned them to the door. Even though they weren't physically there, I wanted everything documented. The day the official eviction was set to be executed was about 2 weeks into Brenda's birthday month for Marcus. The home was, by that time, nearly empty of my personal possessions. I'd placed them in storage or sold them off as I prepared for a fresh start. I remember hiring a moving company to clear out the last bits of furniture that belonged solely to me. As the movers packed items into their truck, who should arrive but Brenda and Karen, presumably having caught wind of the forced eviction. The car that pulled up outside was a battered old sedan, likely Marcus's, that sputtered as it came to a stop. The moment Karen jumped out, I could see rage twisting her features. "You mother ducker!" she screamed, stomping up the driveway in a fury. "What the hell do you think you're doing with all my stuff? Those are my chairs, and that's my table!" I turned calmly to the movers. "Hey guys, do me a favor, don't engage. Everything here is under my name, purchased with my credit, or in my name. If anything belongs to them, they can talk to my lawyer." One of the mover guys nodded. He was a tall, burly fellow with a shaved head who could probably bench press a small car. Karen tried to barrel past him, presumably to come after me physically, but he reached out an arm and blocked her. "Ma'am," he said, "you can't be in here while we're working." Brenda came rushing up from behind. "Don't you dare touch my daughter," she snarled, aiming a finger at the mover. "Brian, call them off. This is still our house too." I raised an eyebrow. "Not anymore. You signed separation papers, remember? And I'm the owner. I have every right to remove my belongings. If you want to claim something is yours, you'll have to show the receipts." Karen, livid, lunged forward. "You can't do this, you piece of shit. You owe me a college fund. You promised. You promised me a future, you worthless asshole." Her voice cracked, a mix of fury and desperation. She tried to claw at my arm, and the mover physically inserted himself between us. "Hey, enough," the mover said, giving Karen a firm look. Another mover gently grabbed her shoulders to keep her back. Her face twisted in rage, tears forming. "Let me go! I'll duck and kill him!" she shouted dramatically, though I suspected it was mostly bluster. At this point, Brenda started shrieking, "Brian, you snake! You know I can drag you to court for this. You're not paying child support." "She's 18, I reminded them icily, "and not my daughter, so I'm not paying anything." Karen's eyes bulged. "After all these years, you think you can just throw us out? Are you insane?" I pointed at the envelope pinned to the front door. "That's the eviction notice. You want to take it up with the judge? Be my guest. But remember, you two wanted this separation. You wanted your ex-husband, Brenda. You wanted your father's house, Karen. Go stay there permanently. I don't owe you anything." Brenda's face was turning scarlet. "This is exactly why I went back to Marcus," she hissed. "You're a cold, heartless bastard. Marcus may have been rough, but at least he had a real soul. You just hide behind your precious logic and rationality to be cruel." "Sure," I said flatly. "I'm the cruel one. I never beat you. I never threatened you. I gave you a comfortable life, a car, a house, money for your daughter's college. That's cruelty, right?" She said nothing for a moment, just glared. Karen tried again to break past the mover's arm, but he was a rock wall. Finally, with a swirl of bitter tears, Karen shrieked, "You'll regret this, Brian! You're going to pay for humiliating us!" I said nothing in return, just gave a dismissive nod to the mover. He let them both know they needed to leave, or the police would be called. With no options left, Brenda and Karen stalked off, cursing and shouting. The battered sedan roared away, sputtering down the street, and I was left standing there, heart racing with adrenaline. It was an ugly scene, but necessary. The illusions had to end. They would learn, sooner or later, that actions have consequences. And oh, how those consequences were unfolding. The next day, I got a call from Brenda's new attorney. The man tried to rattle me, claiming I was guilty of abandonment and psychological abuse. He threatened to demand child support for Karen. I calmly explained that Karen was 18 and I never adopted her. If they wanted to argue she was still a minor in some sense, they could try, but they'd fail. I also mentioned the separation agreement Brenda signed, handing me the freedom to do as I pleased with my assets for the entire month. My attorney was quick to jump in and demolish their arguments in court. He produced the evidence of Brenda's affair that began before the separation, all documented by the PI. The judge, almost amused by the brazen nature of it all, granted the divorce under adultery. I owed them nothing. Even the judge seemed to see the comedic tragedy of the situation. "Tough luck, lady," he'd said to Brenda, barely masking his disdain for the blatant manipulation. Brenda's face had gone white, her spirit finally seeming to crack as reality set in. Karen was in the back of the courtroom, fuming, glaring at me, her arms folded. This wasn't the triumphant return to Marcus's arms they had envisioned. It was an unmitigated disaster for them. The final decree was that the remainder of our joint account, a paltry sum I deliberately left behind, would go to Brenda. That money might buy them a few months of rent in some cheap apartment or help them fix Marcus's old sedan. Meanwhile, I still had the lion's share of funds safely tucked in my private account, free and clear. A month later, I heard through a friend that Brenda and Karen had moved in with Marcus full time, only it wasn't the Rosie family reunion they'd hoped for. Marcus, just as prone to drunken rages as before, was reported to be backhanding Brenda if she so much as frowned in his direction. Karen, who had once championed her father, now found herself forced to take public transportation, dealing with the stares and whispers of classmates who wondered why she no longer had a car. She had to explain that my stepdad took it away, which apparently garnered little sympathy. I took no joy in imagining them in that environment. Abuse is never a pleasant subject, but I also felt no compulsion to rescue them. They had made a choice, humiliating me, draining my goodwill, and brazenly flaunting their betrayal, and they were paying the cost of that decision. The moral conundrum was overshadowed by the simple logic, not my problem. By that point, I had an exit plan for myself. I had accepted a partnership in Bangkok, something I'd been offered years prior but never considered until now. With my new financial freedom, I left for Thailand, stepping onto the plane with the sense of relief that was both exhilarating and tinged with sorrow. 5 years of marriage ended in such a fiasco, but at least I was free. Fast forward a few months, I was settling into my new life in Bangkok. The sweltering heat, the bustling streets, and the melodic chaos of the city offered me a bizarre kind of solace. I rented a modern condo overlooking the Chao Phraya River, diving into my new job with enthusiasm. My personal life was quiet. I had short-lived flings, sure, but nothing serious. I was still recovering from the emotional whiplash of the past. One Sunday afternoon, as I was wandering through a bustling outdoor market, marveling at the array of street food, my phone rang. The caller ID was American, but not in my contacts. Curiosity piqued. I picked up. "Brian speaking," I said. At first, there was silence, then a small, shaky voice that I recognized instantly as Karen's. Hi," she said, sounding nothing like her usual abrasive self. A swirl of conflicting emotions coursed through me. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my tone detached. "I need to talk to you," she said. "Please don't hang up." I stepped aside from the crowd, found a quieter corner near a stand selling fresh coconuts. "You've got 60 seconds, I warned. "Spit it out." Karen let out a shaky breath. I'm pregnant," she finally said, her voice cracking. "And my father, Marcus. He's flipping out. Mom's furious. They kicked me out, literally threw me out of the house. I've got nowhere to go. I'm staying at a friend's place, but I can't stay here for long. I have no money. I don't even have enough to pay for anything. I'm scared, Brian. I don't know what to do." My mind reeled. Karen was pregnant? My 18-year-old ex-stepdaughter. 1,000 questions popped into my head. Who's the father? Possibly some boyfriend or maybe a fling. Knowing her rebellious streak, it didn't surprise me. My shock quickly gave way to a cold sense of finality. She seemed to sense my hesitation. "Please," she pleaded, "you can't leave me like this. I'll do anything. I'll never disrespect you again, I promise. Can you help me with some money for, prenatal care or rent or something?" Time seemed to stand still in that humid Bangkok afternoon. I stared at the vibrant market stalls in front of me, the swirl of tourists and locals. A wave of memories hit me. Karen's scornful eyes, her vicious insults, her glee in pushing her mother toward Marcus, her hateful voicemails, the eviction scene, her attempt to claw my face. Now she was pregnant and cast aside by the very father she championed. A little part of me felt pity, yes, but a bigger part recalled everything she had done to me. "No," I said flatly. She gasped. "What? Are you serious? You're just going to let me rot?" I inhaled slowly, trying to keep my voice steady despite the swirl of feelings. "You told me once that your mother could drink from any watering hole she wants," I reminded her, "and that you'd do the same. Well, go find another watering hole now, Karen. I'm not your father. I owe you nothing. You orchestrated all of this, and now you want me to bail you out?" She started sobbing. "I was a kid. I messed up, okay? I didn't realize it would go this far. Please, Brian, you have the money." I cut her off. "I do have the money. That's correct. But I have zero inclination to give any of it to you. You helped destroy my marriage. You called me every name in the book. You threatened to sue me for domestic abuse. And now you want my help?" She let out a ragged cry. "I'm pregnant. I'm scared. I interrupted her once more. "Karen, I'm hanging up now. Good luck. You made your bed. Lie in it. Brian, don't do this to me, please. But I'd already pressed the red button to end the call, my heart hammered with adrenaline, a part of me shaking from the confrontation. Anger, pity, sadness, everything warred inside me. But the bitterness of betrayal won out. I wouldn't let her back into my life as if nothing had happened. And that was it. I stared at my phone, exhaling a shuddering breath. Then I squared my shoulders and rejoined the crowd, determined to move on with my day, and by extension, my life. The last word she'd spat out before the line cut was, "Please," which drifted away into silence. A final attempt at manipulation, or perhaps a genuine cry for help. Either way, it changed nothing. She was pregnant, and I sent her straight to hell.